go to the base up at Holiday Beach?
Yeah. I got a cousin that lives up there quite a bit.
All right, by 9 o'clock, it's 6:30. We missed a few law enforcement, but maybe they'll show up. Maybe we scared them off. Who knows? All right, before we start, we always say the pledge. If I can get y'all to stand up with me, right over here to your left. Everybody hands off and make sure your hands over your right side. Now, let's don't pull no Oklahoma tonight, okay? All right, here we go. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You remain standing for a short invocation. Father God, I ask you today would bless each one here. Bless us as we preserve our freedoms. Try to in the best way we know how. Give us safe passage home. We praise you for it in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I'd like to welcome you to the APR meeting here. I believe that this is our 17th meeting. And, you know, I'm quite honored and humbled to be here. It looks like our sheriff may have showed up. But one person that I want to recognize tonight is a guy that has kept me laughing a lot. And if you're on Facebook, he may have kept you laughing a lot too. And, you know, forever time I get to speak, there's a bunch of people underneath me that I really wish they were up here instead of me. I'm not a good public speaker, and I'm nervous as a long-tailed cat. I'm looking for a rocking chair. But I just want to say thank you, Dennis, Stacy. He's right back here in the back. If it were not for him, we would not be here tonight with the law enforcement list today. I have personally given up on getting to meet with Sheriff Sexton, and he helped me contact him. What one man can't do, another one can. So that's great. Right now, I'm going to let, bless my heart, I can't remember his name, but you come up here and introduce yourself. From Friends of NRA.
Hey, you. Hello, my name is George Lander, and I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and address you folks. I'm here representing the Tuscaloosa County Friends of NRA.
I'm sorry, I'm giving hand signals to the people in the back.
It's all right. Russell Essery and I are on a committee. We put together a fundraising banquet every year. This is going to be the 8th year for our fundraising. As you may well know, the Friends of the NRA is basically I guess an initiative as part of the NRA Foundation, which is separate from the NRA's membership and Institute for Legislative Action. It's a charitable organization, so you can donate and take it as a tax write-off. What we wind up doing is we raise money to protect our civil rights, as you're here doing also. We do look forward to support the shooting sports for the future. And a lot of the money that we wind up raising goes to the Boy Scouts, the 4-H, and safety training, a lot of female safety training, that sort of thing. So I'm here announcing that on October 4th, we're going to have another banquet. Over on the table, we put out some flyers here to give you an idea of what's going on. The tickets for attendance are $30. We have many different ways to support it. If you're not able to come, then you can buy basically or give donations and get a chance to win some prizes. It's at the Belk Activity Center, and I know you all are very adamant about your open carry rights. You know, we're just fortunate that we're able to bring guns in there to be part of the fundraising activity. Weapons on premises isn't allowed. But I think it's a very worthy cause. We're going to have food catered in. As you may well know from other activities like Ducks Unlimited and the Turkey Federation, we do live auction, silent auction. We have various games to try and raise money. And is there anything else I've forgotten, Russell?
There'll be over 50 firearms shops now for 50.
We've got lots of different opportunities to come in and purchase firearms there. So I just want to, encourage you to come out. We need to show our presence in the community. And call me. My number's on here, and let me know. And Russell and I will be here after the event in case you want to talk to us more about what goes on and what's going to be the program. And then I do have tickets here available also. Thank you very much.
Okay, in a few minutes, we're going to kind of do the little church thing and pass the pot around. It costs money to have our brochures made up, and it costs money to rent this facility, and if you feel so inclined, please make a donation to the Red Coffee Pot. Okay? So y'all just go ahead, we're going to go ahead and start this around. If you will, just pass it down one row and turn around and pass it up. It's my privilege to introduce to you, well, I'll tell you what, let me go ahead and do my part, share most of it, and then I'll let your part come in. That be okay? That's fine. Okay, good deal. All right. By the way, how many first timers do we have here today for a first time gun rights meeting? Okay. I want to tell you a little bit about what Alabama gun rights is. And we originally started off as Alabama Open Carry, but really we're much more than that. We're about all gun rights, and right behind that, we're not about just gun rights. We're about upholding the Constitution as a whole. We changed the name from ALOC to AGR, which stands for Alabama Gun Rights. And the reason we exist is to educate law-abiding citizens and law enforcement officers on the legality of open carrying or concealing a weapon in defense of self and state. We also strive to make sure these rights are preserved for future generations. Many people simply don't know, or they didn't realize the rights they have, not just gun rights, but other rights, protected by the Constitution of the United States and Alabama. As we moved along, it became apparent that many people would embrace their rights if they just knew them. Please understand that we're not all about open carry. We're about saving all our rights that have been under constant attack since day one of our country's beginning. We do, however, feel that all rights hinge on the right of self-defense against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as protected by our Constitution. I believe the right of self-defense predates our Constitution and was put in us by our Creator. Please know that Alabama gun rights doesn't care if you carry openly, concealed, or not at all. I don't think I've ever told anybody they should open carry. We do ask that you exercise your rights. We do care and almost demand, no, we do demand, that you support the Constitution of the great state of Alabama. All law enforcement officers and military are required to take an oath to uphold and defend our Constitution. In my mind, and in my opinion, citizens should be held to that same oath. When someone tells me they're telling me the truth, I usually say, okay, I believe you. But I want you to know I'm really bad about checking things out for myself, and I hope you see me in that same frame today. I ask that you check out and verify for yourself everything I say. Look and learn it for yourself. And I would ask that you also do the same for the speakers who will be next on the agenda. I really don't think it's a big deal to prove yourself, whether what others say is fact, fiction, or opinion. And it's been my experience that a lot of opinions overshadow the facts. I'm a church-going person, and when I sit and listen to someone preach, I check it out to make sure that he's preaching the truth. It's my job to hold my pastor to the truth. It's everyone's job to be sure our elected officials are following the law and not enforcing their opinions as law. We must remember that we are a government of laws, not of men. I assure you it's enlightening when you learn for yourself the freedoms we have and the sacrifices that were made so we may have them. We're one of the very few countries who allow its citizens to even own weapons for themselves. This is the very reason I believe our country's lasted as long as it has. It's exciting and it's uplifting to me when I see in a person's eyes the moment when the enlightenment occurs. And you can really see it, guys. When they say, hey, this is really true. It's really true. I've been told different all my life. It is with much satisfaction that since I started this journey about 2.5 years ago, I don't get to see too much of that anymore. It's because many citizens have learned the truth about gun rights and many of our other freedoms, thanks to Alabama gun rights members and others who spread the word with great enthusiasm. I'm proud of you guys. You've done a great work. The citizens are learning too. They are. I want to know, by a show of hands here, when you were open carry, how many times you had a citizen say something positive about your open carry? More than one time? More than 5 times? How many have had a negative contact from a citizen? More than I would have thought. Openly carrying a weapon is a huge responsibility and not one that we should take lightly. It's also a big responsibility to carry a weapon concealed. It's important that you understand as much as you possibly can before you decide to make that decision. It's important that you practice and become very familiar with the weapon you choose to carry, and you must learn the laws concerning each and follow them very closely. It is the intention of Alabama gun rights to hold each elected or appointed official to the oath of his or her office. If they fail to uphold these rights and liberties, especially the right of bearing arms for the defense of self and state, protected by our Constitution, it's Alabama gun rights' mission to do the best we can to spread the word and remove them from office or position at the first opportunity. We will not go quietly into the night. And Sheriff, since you got to go just a little early than we thought, I think I'm going to stop right here and just give the sheriff a hand as he comes up, and I want to welcome you guys.
Very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come visit with you. This is clearly an issue that does have a lot of questions. This is clearly an issue that folks are referring to opinions, and most of the issues that I hear are referred to as Attorney General's opinions. And so we're going to hopefully provide some information for you tonight so that hopefully we leave here with a little bit clearer delineation. But I think that the bottom line to this is that that this is definitely going to have to be clarified by the legislature, or it's going to have to be clearly clarified by the courts. So in order to do that, this is an issue that needs to have that kind of discussion, so we have to have those folks here tonight. With me is Chris England. He is a legislator state legislator for the city of Tuscaloosa. He's here. Next to him is Kerry, who is acting police chief right now for Northport Police Department. Next to him is Chief Steve Anderson from the Tuscaloosa Police Department. And then the gentleman that's wearing the jacket is retired Alabama Supreme Court Justice Bernard Harwood. So we wanted to make sure that we brought a panel tonight that could actually try to answer some questions and bring clarity to an issue that I have heard all over the board. I had a young lady the other day tell me what Chief Anderson said, and I've heard him clearly say something different. And so we wanted to make sure that that not only did we come tonight, but hopefully we get out of the opinions a little bit. We start talking about somewhat of the issues that are before us. So what I would like to do to kick this off is basically let Judge Harwood come up and visit with you. But I asked him the question, is open carry legal in the state of Alabama? And where are we in regards to carrying a weapon onto someone else's private property, which is where we get all the phone calls. I was glad to see that a few folks said they've had some negative contact, because I can tell you how many negative contacts that I've had regarding people that call me and say, hey, there's a guy with a gun in my store and he's not wearing a badge, I don't think he's a cop. So we've had that. We've had the incident where folks have asked people not to carry the gun in and they refuse to leave, and we've had to go to that. So I mean, we've had some issues that have not been good ones, and we don't want to arrest anybody if we don't have to, and we're trying to make sure we avoid doing that. But I think there is a clear-cut question on whether or not open carry means that you can carry a gun onto someone else's private property. And I see some folks shaking their heads like, yeah, you can. So we're going to talk about that tonight. Also, to give you an idea, Sheriff D.T. Marshall from Montgomery County currently has pending with the Alabama Attorney General's office a Attorney General's opinion that's rather, or a request for Attorney General's opinion that is rather very clearly asks the question, does 1152 mean that an individual can carry a firearm onto another person's private property? So hopefully that's one of the conversations that we get into tonight. It's a rather gray area for us, but again, has not been overturned by the state legislature, nor has the court of higher jurisdiction taken action against this. So what I'd like to do is just ask Judge Harwood if he wouldn't mind stepping up and discussing this issue a little bit. I'm sure that we'll have some questions that will arise from that conversation. Thank you.
Sheriff Sexton asked me a couple of weeks ago if I would research the law on this issue. And I said, well, Sheriff, you understand, if I research the law, I'm just going to call it the way I see it, balls and strikes. I don't have a stake in this. I said, now to be fair with you, Sheriff, when I was circuit judge, before I was on the Alabama Supreme Court, I was circuit judge here in Tuscaloosa County for 10 years. I said, I carried a concealed weapon because we didn't have any protection at the courthouse. And half the time when I left the courthouse, I'd hear folks grumbling and you get a little defensive about those sorts of things because the Alabama Administrative Office of Court said we can't provide you with any security. Those of you who go in the courthouse now and see the metal detectors, maybe will recall, I can see some of you certainly go back as far as I am, and I'm 72 years old now. We didn't even have metal detectors. We didn't have anything in the courthouse. Anybody could come in at any time, go up on any floor they wanted to, and guns were found in different circumstances sometimes. Sometimes held by people who had mental issues. So it's an issue that, as I told Sheriff Sexton, every time I ran, I had the support of the NRA. I have my own, but now I carry a licensed pistol when I carry. So this issue of open carry was really a little new to me. I mean, I'm like a lot of folks. I had not thought that much about it, wasn't aware of what the law was, so it was interesting to me from an intellectual challenge to start with the earliest Alabama Constitution, 1819, to go back before that to William and Mary, the English Bill of Rights. How did all this come about? How did that fold into our Second Amendment of the United States Constitution? And then trace it on forward from the earliest court decision of the Alabama Supreme Court in 1840 up to the present time. We've had 9 decisions by the Alabama appellate courts, 3 by the Alabama Supreme Court, the latest of which was 1928. So we really don't have the most current statement of opinion by the Alabama Supreme Court. We had that opinion subsequent to then by what was first called the Alabama Court of Appeals. That court later was subdivided into 2 separate courts and enlarged in size and became the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals as far as cases such as this are concerned. Essentially what I found was unvaryingly, I tell you some things with certainty, unvaryingly from the beginning to the end, the courts have held that a citizen in Alabama has the right to openly carry a pistol for his or her defense. Of course, the Constitution says, the Alabama Constitution, that a citizen has a right to carry for the defense of himself or for the state. So if somebody asks me, what's the clearest statement of the law you can give us, I can say, well, the courts have said if you're out on a public highway or other public places, although even that can get a little tricky under some of the case law, under the Alabama Constitution, you have the right to openly carry a pistol without any permit or anything else. The cases have said that you do not have a right, and I say they said this, they said it in different contexts. One of the cases involved a fellow who was in a store and someone handed him a pistol, and he was arrested for having a pistol openly without, and with that charge. He didn't defend on constitutional grounds. He said, look, I didn't carry it. They handed it to me, I never moved. The court said, well, that isn't what carry means in that context. You don't have to carry it, like a bucket brigade. If you're in possession under the way carry was used under the old cases, you're guilty of that. So that was all he raised. But the courts have said, in fact, you might, and I've read yours literature, and I say it's pretty well accurate. And the cases you cite in the Attorney General's opinions are all that I find out myself in agreement with, insofar as openly carrying a pistol. Now, what the cases have said, however, is the key to the Constitution is you have a right as a citizen to carry it in the defense of yourself or the state. And so some of these cases, although they come at it from different directions, they said, well, but if you go on the property of another person with a pistol without their permission, you're not really defending yourself. You have the right to stay off of that property if you want to. And if they tell you you're not supposed to be on my property, you can't really say you're doing it in defense of yourself. The Attorney General has on a couple of occasions said that, you know, there are going to be some other restrictions too, some of which we probably would just instinctively agree to. The Attorney General has said on a couple of occasions that it's his opinion that you can't carry an unconcealed and unlicensed pistol anywhere, meaning that you can't carry it on the land of another person without his permission, and you can't carry it, and I'm looking for the decision where they talked about you couldn't carry it on an airline. There's some other places they have listed that they suggest you would not be allowed. So here's the latest category: airline, passenger planes. I've just flown in from New Orleans today, and I know I went through every sort of security. The first time I went through that thing where they put you in there, they zap and they ask you to stand out, and you kind of wonder if you're tingling, you know. I'm not sure what it did to me, but so you can't carry, according to most authorities, on an airline, passenger plane, in sports stadiums. The cases have said you have a right to carry it, for example, clearly on a public highway. That's a public area, a public venue. They haven't sorted out all these other areas. The Alabama Supreme Court has said, as the U.S. Supreme Court has said, with respect to the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, that the right to carry in defense of yourself doesn't mean to carry any sort of weapon, anytime, anywhere. There can be some restrictions. We in Alabama have not had that sorted out yet. We simply, as I say, we haven't had an Alabama Supreme Court decision since 1928. The Attorney General's opinions, while helpful, their status under the law is they are merely advisory. They are a statutory arrangement whereby an elected official wants to get an Attorney General opinion and then acts in accordance with what the Attorney General says he thinks the law is, then that individual is protected from any suit by any other department of the state. It is not the same as an opinion by the Alabama Supreme Court or the Court of Criminal Appeals. For that matter, the Alabama Supreme Court is like the top of the pyramid. It is the definitive lawmaker for the state of Alabama. But since 1928, we haven't had a case that's gone all the way up to the Alabama Supreme Court. So what we have are the decisions of what was initially the Alabama Court of Appeals, later the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals. Those appeals are good law. In other words, the rule of law in Alabama is if you have an opinion by the highest appellate court that the case reached, and the Alabama Supreme Court hasn't overruled the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals, then that's good law. So you have cases in the Alabama Court of Criminal Appeals that say, as far as open carry is concerned, you have the right to carry a pistol in defense of yourself, and that, and as far as areas go, they have said, certainly on public property. As far as other areas, they have said you don't have the right to carry on private property. Now, I'm not here to argue the wisdom of it one way or the other. I'm simply trying to recite to you what I've come to understand is the law by reading each case in sequence, reading each Attorney General opinion. I read all the United States Supreme Court opinions. You know, we had the Helen and McDonald case recently. That big scrap was all about, well, do you have a right as an individual to bear arms in the Second Amendment as opposed to in support of a militia? And the U.S. Supreme Court said, no, it's an individual right. And then the next case, McDonald, the dispute was, well, that just applies, doesn't it, to prohibitions against the federal government. Can't a local government organization still prohibit them? They said, no, this Second Amendment carries over and is binding on the states through the 14th Amendment and all local ordinances. So they've settled that as far as the Second Amendment is concerned. Rather than hold forth anymore, because one thing I learned when I was running for office statewide and in Tuscaloosa County, I never had anybody come up to me later and say, you know, your talk was just a little too short. So I'm going to stop now, but I'll certainly be around to respond to any question that are from me or otherwise I should participate. Thank you. There's one thing about Section 52, and I think all of you are well enough engaged in this that when I say Section 73 and Section 52, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was one case at one point, the Stinson case, where the Court of Appeal said, well, look, the Section 52 says, except as otherwise provided in this article. And Section 73 is a part of that same article. Section 73 doesn't have anything like that in it. It doesn't say, except as otherwise provided. When Section 52 was passed first, later when Section 73 was passed, I think it was in 36, it was part of something they called the
Uniform Firearms.
That's right, the Uniform Firearms Act. So the Stinson case said, it looks like 73, the Uniform Firearms Act, looks like to us, it's just wiped out 52. The 52 is not even on the books anymore. Later Court of Criminal Appeals cases came back some years later because things had changed. They said, well, wait a minute, the Alabama legislature has twice adopted a unified code as a part of their entire legislative enactment, and each time they brought forward Section 52 in it. They're not treating it like it's a dead letter and gone, but they still said, but because 73 is the latest statute in the sequence, we consider that you have to read 73 as sort of trumping 52 to where there's a conflict. So they tried to reconcile 73 and 52, but the Court of Criminal Appeals has said that 52 is still on the books because the legislature, after the Stinson case, has said we think it's a dead letter. The legislature twice enacted comprehensive codes where they brought forward and included Section 52 in it along with 73. So that's the best that court has had to say about how they see the interaction between 52 and 73. Thanks.
You just, I feel like I'm outnumbered.
I have listened to people talk to me and had an opportunity to talk to Eddie and others, and I just listen to what people say. I haven't had too many opinions on this issue. To all of us, it's great. And so what I did was I just said, let me go get somebody to do this, which is Judge Harwood, after I was asked to come talk to this group. But across the state, this has been an issue, and I understand that there has been a case made. I understand a guy was arrested in a park. I'm getting here. I don't know the details of the case, and I've only heard bits and pieces of it. So if he was arrested in a park, to me, that would seem that that's perfectly legal. I have absolutely no qualms. Somebody can walk down the middle of McFarland Boulevard with a gun on, openly carrying it. Now, what's going to happen when we get those 911 calls? We have to respond, and we have a duty to respond. And then I've had people that have called and said, well, what are you going to do when you get there? Well, what's the circumstance? What time is it? I'm sure that every police officer is going to deal with this differently at 3 o'clock as they are. And we just had a guy that, unfortunately, also think about from our perspective, we just had a guy that shot 17 people up at the Copper Top. I was on y'all's website looking at your blog, and there was an 18-year-old that was on there saying, I'm not old enough for a pistol permit. Can I carry a rifle open? And I was going, wow, that's going to be an interesting experience when they walk down the University Boulevard towards the federal courthouse or something. So that's going to be it. I'm just saying, thank goodness that's Steve's jurisdiction. So this has not been something at the top of our list. We have other issues that are much higher on our priority. I agree with what Eddie said. A majority of the folks that we deal with open carry sit on the front row of the church and are good folks. The question comes up as this becomes a little bit more known, what's going to happen when folks that have been have an issue with mental health or have an issue with selling dope or gang affiliation or whatever, as they pick up on this, they're going to do it. What's going to happen when we see a member of a motorcycle gang who may not have a criminal record, but he's going open carry, but he's wearing colors? What's that do? And there's going to be a number of questions that come up from this, from the cops' perspective. So those are all issues that we're going to have to answer as we go down the road. But I think the big question that has been in my mind is, where are we on 52? And the discussions that I've had with folks throughout the state, the question is, that's the question. That's what DT Marshall's asking. DT's asking, is Alabama an open carry state? I think it is. But where are we on carrying a gun on someone else's property? That's where we run into the biggest majority of the problems.
I've got to ask this question if it's okay. Where is the penalty? 52.
Well, that was one of the questions they raised in some of the court cases about.
Can everybody hear the judge?
Oh, yeah.
Can everybody hear him?
No, listen, when I was in school, I note I got to, Bernard talks too loud in class, so I don't need your microphone. You're right. What the cases have wrestled with is the idea, all right, you've got it, says you can't do it, but you don't find where it says, and the penalty will be X for it. So you could get an injunction, you could go to court and have somebody have a restraining order, but it's very tricky, and all the cases subsequently said, well, we're going to prosecute, every case that came out was prosecuted under 73, or 73 read into 52.
I've got all this up here, and I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I mean, I'm not an attorney.
That may be a benefit to you.
And I've got the 1940 Code of Alabama here, where pretty much, in the way I interpret it, which, Supreme Court, you got 3-4 decisions all the time, and pretty much they left it in there because of the officer's exceptions. Because an officer may have to go on property not your own. If you're on there for official business, then it doesn't matter if you say this is private property to get off.
Well, the interesting thing to see how complicated it is, that first case, which I know you'd be familiar with, the 1840 case, the Reed case, where it was a sheriff who was arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. And what
Remember who arrested him?
Yeah, I think it's a citizen's arrest, best.
It was the police that arrested him, so chief, y'all, right here you go.
But in that case, and that shows you how the court has wrestled with, they said, well, look, the sheriff doesn't need to carry a concealed weapon because the authority of being a sheriff is enough to protect you. Secondly, and secondly, they said this, and this is where this has gotten into all the cases since, and they said, well, look, we think that you probably have a right to open carry, because if you're going to defend yourself, you got to be able to get to your firearm. And therefore, concealed is something that can be controlled because it really is not necessarily defensive. Now, that was the analysis in the case. I'm not sitting here saying, this is Bernard Harwood's argument with you about that's the gospel. I'm just saying that's how the court rationalized that concealed was different from open carry, because one is more of a defensive thing as opposed to you got to conceal, maybe you're looking offensive.
They said it was so much about public sentiment. Like I said, I'm a research junkie, Clayton Kramer, John Lott, all them people, and I respect you, you know what I mean? But, we still can disagree because of
absolutely.
The Declaration of Rights.
I'm a married man.
I grew up around some attorneys. In fact, one of my friend's fathers, he's a clerk used to be for Bob Esdale.
Sure.
But in this, it pretty much says in the 1940 code that they left it in there. That was my interpretation, and they left it in there to give the policeman, officer's exception. Because an officer might have to go on that property for offensive purposes. And it doesn't matter if I say it's private property or not. Now, if a police officer comes on my property for no reason other than to be on my property, I can actually kick him off. Now, it may not be the smartest thing to do, but I can do.
Well, all I can say is that argument has not been made in the cases. There was no case that I found said, look, 52 is only for police officers or 73 trumps it except for police officers. Nobody said that yet, so.
But you know, I haven't found a case, and I've got general practices, offenses and defenses and all that stuff I've read through. I haven't found a case that says that. You know, you go by the 1955 John Patterson decision, which, you know, he pretty much says that you can make these restrictions going by state versus read. But one of the key things in state versus read, it says you cannot restrict a right so much that it makes it a privilege.
Exactly.
And so just because I got a permit to carry concealed, if I can carry concealed there, I should be able to carry with a permit. Without a permit, open.
I understand your argument. I'm going by what the cases have said that I had read and analyzed, and that's all I know.
But I haven't seen any case like you said since 1928.
That's right.
And then
But 1928,
in the 1923 Code of Alabama, it listed a penalty for 52.
we had a case not too long ago where the Alabama Supreme Court said it doesn't matter that it's 100 years old. Never been overruled. It is still the law of the land. So 1928 is the controlling law of Alabama as enunciated by the Alabama Supreme Court. I'm gonna sit down while I'm ahead.
You know, and from our perspective, you know, from the 1 second, I'll be right there. But from my perspective, and the oath that I took to uphold the laws of the state of Alabama and the Constitution, we're trying to reach out and find an answer to this issue. Of course, DT has asked for an opinion, but that's just that. It's an opinion. It does not hold the weight of law. So these, you know, I keep hearing about opinions, but I think Judge Harwood made it pretty clear that an opinion does not hold weight of law. And that's what a lot of folks are working on are working off of as an opinion. So even the Attorney General's office will tell you that there's hazard in moving forward on an opinion. I think the other issue that we're waiting on is whether or not the legislature repeals the act or if the court of higher jurisdiction overturns it. Neither has happened. So in the cop world, again, it appears that 52 is still in play. Now, we could do a couple different things. Maybe there's a volunteer here tonight that would like to do this. But we could wander down to Home Depot, and we could make a case and let it go to court and let it ride all the way to the Supreme Court. That would be one option to get this answered, and if somebody would like to do that. But either that, we may want to wait on the legislature. If there's a volunteer, we could probably work that out. But and it's probably going to have to be somebody that owns multiple firearms, because your firearm would be, unfortunately, with us in Evans being for a while. But I don't know. I really don't know how to answer the question that comes because of the gray area that we're in. As I said, this is not the top priority for us, but it does bring up a lot of interesting situations when somebody tries to carry a gun in here or go over on campus and carry a gun over on campus into a classroom building. You know, there's folks that are being told to turn around. We have folks, as I said, that have gone into to stores or businesses where folks have said out, and there's been an argument, and then we end up coming over there. So, you know, there have been some very interesting situations and that have come to fruition. And so we wanted to get an answer on the question as much as anybody else. Yes, sir, you had a question.
Yes, sir. Sheriff, I first like to thank you for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Your time's very valuable. I also heard that you have to go after a little bit, so.
Well, I'm going to do everything I can say. I want to answer this question as much as anybody else.
Okay, super. This question is a little bit of deviation from what they're asking. I currently live in Shelby County and may be moving into your fine county here soon.
Register vote, please.
Yes, sir.
I see one on the front row. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it.
The question I wanted to ask you is, currently in Shelby County, I am a person who owns several Class 3 weapons. And as you know, the rules to own those are very stringent. You have to do it for ATF, you have to get fingerprint, your mug shot, and everything else. Part of the requirement in getting that paperwork into ATF is you have to visit your chief law enforcement officer of the county you reside in. I was wondering if you cure a nasty rumor for me. I heard that you're not known to sign that stuff.
I'm not. There was the FOP and other law enforcement entities came to me and asked that we not do it. What you can do is take option B, which is to go through and get a trust, which is a clear option that people can take. And so you don't need my signature. So it's clear that even though your question is, do I sign them? I don't have to sign it when you have another option, which is to put the weapon in trust, and that's an easy situation. And everybody that comes to me is told, here's the other option, you do not have to use the sheriff. But I support the Second Amendment. You know, I know plenty of people that own all kinds of guns and whatever else, and, you know, people have come and wanted to have cannons and tanks and mortars and military weapons and whatever else, and all I tell them is, hey, all you gotta do is go get a trust, you go through ACO, get a trust, you don't need the sheriff. And they all go, really? And I go, yes, sir, you don't need me, and they move on and go through and get a trust. But we have not hampered anybody from getting a Class 3 weapon, they just go through the trust. And, but based on the request from the FOP and law enforcement in general that was made to me, and my own guys, my guys have had weapons pointed at them, and they would prefer not to have the Class 3 weapons. That I said, yes, I would do that, so I haven't. But I've told everybody, go put it in trust, and then you don't need me.
Right. Is that your main reason you just don't like the full paperwork, I guess, or?
I'm sorry?
Is it more of a hassle, is that why you don't like to sign that?
No, I think I very clearly said, and let me try one more time, that you don't need the sheriff.
Right.
You can go through a trust, but when the FOP and my own deputies come to me and say, we're not excited about these things, we're the ones that are on the street, we prefer not to have these to where we have to face them, probably more so than you do being me. I said, okay. But again, anybody who comes to me, I tell them, hey, you got an opportunity to go get you got option B, I would recommend you take option B. I have not kept anybody from getting a Class 3 firearm, but they go through the trust process.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
With 52, reading it, as it, just like just reading it at face value as it is, wouldn't it prohibit a law enforcement officer off duty from being a security guard and having weapons?
I'm sorry, doing what? I don't understand your question, I apologize.
It actually tells you in 52, the exception of who can carry over another person's property. And it tells you under what circumstances. Wouldn't it prohibit a law enforcement officer that was off duty from being a security guard and carrying a pistol?
For a security company or as?
No, just say security for Mike.
I think he said like movie theater.
Well, first of all, you're saying, I think what you're asking me, is an off-duty deputy employed by a private entity, is that correct?
Or, yeah.
Okay, well, when a police officer, when a police officer's off duty and he's in that position, he's still acting as a police officer. If I follow your question correctly, and I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question. But I think that what you're asking is that he'd still be an officer in that situation.
If I may, I believe I can clarify. The language in 52 is very strict and does not provide exception for police officers when they're not in the performance of their duties. Doesn't provide exception for private citizens employed in security positions. Doesn't provide exception for private citizens when they're in shooting ranges. Doesn't provide for private citizens in any business, no matter what the owner of the business says. The owner of the business cannot overrule 52 as it's written on the books. Are you saying that that's how you enforce 52, or are you saying that you give it a little more leniency because of that gray area?
Well, again, in my opinion, we're in a gray area, but I think what Judge Harwood just articulated is that 52 says that carrying an open carry on a private property constitutes offensive and not defensive, and that that believes that 52 is in that favor.
Yes, so
and
security.
And in regard to security, again, for one of our guys, when they're working on duty, they are still a law enforcement officer, follow the policies and procedures of the department.
So when I go to Woods and Water to buy a gun, and they hand it to me using Daniel State, locomotion not necessary, because the judge was trying to remember over there, I'm violating the law?
Well, as I understand what the cases did, 52, as you're right, starts out basically just saying you can't carry a pistol anywhere, except on your own property and your own abode. That's the language. Then came 73, the court began to wrestle with that, plus having to recognize that as it reads, 52 would be violative of the Alabama State Constitution. So what they finally said is, let me finish, say I'm a married man, I'm used to having that other side. So what the courts have finally done to try to reconcile this is said, What 52 means, as we understand it, is you can openly carry anywhere except on another person's property. Because we consider that if you go on their property, and one case said, without their permission, or if they object, so you can't really tell, well, are they saying there has to be an objection? But they said because that is not offensive, and the Constitution guarantees carrying the pistol in defense of yourself. Now that's the best I can make out of what the cases have said.
And I understand what you're saying, but it doesn't say property not your own, it says premises not your own. Okay, if I walk into Walmart, I own part of it.
Well, good for you.
It's a mutual fund, it's a stock, so I actually own part of that premises. So that, it says premises not your own or under your control. So you're talking about a gray area, when people own stocks and unless it's a private mom and pop store, mutual funds cover just about everything.
Well, I mean, I own AT&T stock, but I can't not pay my phone bill.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that that's premises not your own or under your control.
Well, we'd like to answer your question on the law enforcement side. I think I understand where you're going, but I think Chief Manners is going to.
And I just wanted to apologize to you, Sheriff, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, not a problem.
I'm bad at it too, so excuse me.
Well, just in relation to the previous question about officers working off duty on property or premises not their own. When we're working off duty at a location, it's at the request of that particular owner. So basically, being at their request, they're asking us to come on there, and they know that we're armed, and so they want us there. It's a little different than a citizen coming onto their property that has not been invited to come on carrying a weapon. So there's a difference there. There is a difference. Whether you agree with me or not, there's a distinct difference there. Yes, sir.
So you're saying that if an officer works off duty, say at Harco Drug or something like that, they can wear their uniform and be paid by Harco Drug plus be a 24-hour policeman?
Well, when they're
It's
working.
kind of double dipping there with a uniform for the city.
No, it's not double dipping because they're not being paid by the city at that particular time. They're being paid by
They're
Harco.
a police officer for 24 hours a day.
And
I mean, that's a double dipping if I've ever seen.
no, it'd be double dipping if the officer was being paid by
But he's wearing
Harco.
his uniform.
And he's allowed to do that. He is allowed to wear his uniform. And in the case that he makes an arrest while working off duty, then he goes on duty at that particular time. And he's no longer working for Harco, now he's working for the city of Tuscaloosa. So it's not double dipping. It's double dipping if he's being paid by both entities at the same time. So there's a difference.
But he is showing his uniform as a peace officer.
Yes, he is allowed to do that. And that is a part of working as an off-duty police officer.
I've actually, I can't cite the case, but there is a Supreme Court decision in Alabama that clearly states that when an officer is in a bank working, he cannot serve two masters. But I agree with your decision, he can magically become a police officer again if somebody is breaking the law and then switch back to his other master, which is the bank.
Well, no, he doesn't magically become a police officer because he is a
Well,
police officer.
Terminology, correct? I mean, you get the gist of what I'm saying.
He can go from being off-duty, working for a private employer, to being back on duty, and, if we will, Sheriff has suggested we get back up and carry. But yes, this is a completely different situation.
We'd be more than glad to come in and talk about the other one. There's the Ethics Commission has a ruling, a specific legislation that allows to answer your question. We'd be more than glad to come back and talk about that on another evening, but we agreed to come speak about it over the period of time. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We were talking about the restrictions on open carry. You mentioned a biker gang, somebody had mental problems.
No, let's clarify what I said. I didn't say anything about restrictions. I didn't use that word as I went on that. I said there's going to be some issues and concerns as people learn about this that will come down the road from cops. You know, those are going to be the question, but there is no restriction on that.
Well, my idea was that line of thought, which is part of our problem.
I just want to make sure I'm not misquoted. I'm not saying anything about restrictions.
It should be brought up.
Okay.
You know, there are other laws that can handle people that have been convicted of felony, can't get permit, you know, that can handle that.
No, sir, that's not what I said. Now, let me back up 1 second. If you recall what I said, if you see somebody wearing, flying colors, you did not have a criminal record, but you see them flying colors, that's gonna bring up a very interesting issue. But I said if you have a person that has not got a felony record, as this moves on, okay, or a probationer, and you could be, he could be a probationer, for example, or whatever. But if he's flying colors and open carry, it's gonna be an interesting situation. Because what is probable cause or the reasoning of a reasonable person? It's going to be, we may have some sort of criminal activity here. So, it starts getting into some very interesting issues on the cop side very quickly. Or at 3 o'clock in the morning if you come across that particular individual. It's a little bit different than 10 a.m. And
Well, what I'm saying is, what does flying colors got to do with carrying a weapon?
probable cause to make a stop.
I know a lot of guys that wear that.
I don't agree with that at all.
No, I'm saying if you take an outlaw motorcycle gang and they're wearing their colors, and take the Devil's Disciples, for example, and you have that. And you got a couple ones that they have a couple other bicycle organizations that come close, there would be enough, there'd be enough of an issue that the officer in the function of their normal duties would establish enough for a stop to find out what's going on and clarify he's not a felon or what have you. So it gets to some interesting issues. I'm just throwing that one out there as it goes. Yes, ma'am.
What about this gentleman right here that's wearing his colors and he's got his gun and his colors?
Have you got Devil's Disciple on your back by some chance?
No, it says wearing his colors.
That's not color, the color thing.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, but you're also wearing Christian Motorcycle Association. You're not wearing Devil's Disciples. Okay. I think that would be the opposite end of the spectrum. I think you would fall into the front row of the church that we talked about. So the issue is based on information that we have at the time is what we have on the issue of probable cause. Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, that's an issue.
If I go to said store and they don't have a sign posted that requests that nobody open carry in the store, up until the point that the manager comes up and asks me to leave, am I okay with that? Up to that point.
I think Judge Harwood answered your question. I think you're on very questionable ground.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if you would be the question you're asking would be what I just asked for. If there's a volunteer that would really like to go down and let's answer the question here in Tuscaloosa County, if we don't have it done by the legislature, then the other way to answer the question is have the courts rule on it. And then we would get a for sure ruling out of Tuscaloosa County. And that would be one way to clarify the gray area, because this is basically a gray issue. You got a gentleman in the back of the room that says one thing, got a Supreme Court judge up front saying another. And so, I mean, it's a gray issue, but there's a way to answer the question. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm a simple kind of man, so I'm not in all the law. I sat this afternoon in the shrimp basket and ate dinner with my wife across from Ford, Tuscaloosa Police Department. Nobody said nothing. Me and my wife both open carrying. But I didn't get a clear understanding of what you just told him. If I'm carrying my pistol openly and I go into a business, if they ask me to leave, I'll leave. And I have been asked to leave. I open carried at the movie theater, sat through a whole movie, nothing was said, come out, the children was playing some video games, the manager come, you mind returning to your car? No problem. Yes, ma'am. I left immediately with no argument, and I will continue to do so. But I need to know where are we standing on that. I need a clear answer from the sheriff and from the chief of police. How are we going to handle this situation? If we are
okay, let me stop you right there, if I may. Let me stop you right there. I'll say it again. This is a gray issue, and it's not taken. It hasn't been answered by the legislature yet. Hopefully, it will. Now, if we really want to answer it, then let's get it answered in the courts. But you have a judge that has very clearly told you tonight that in his opinion and based on the legislation, that you are not carrying a weapon in a defensive posture, you're actually offensive, in an offensive posture when you're carrying that gun on the property of another. Are you subject to arrest? I think the answer based on, I would hope we don't do it. I would hope that the property owner goes and gets a warrant and whatever else, but you could be, from what I hear the judge saying, what I think that law enforcement has clearly said across the state. I've had people tell me that Chief Anderson has told them that you're okay. When I've talked to him, he's already said, though, that open carry is legal in a public place, there's no doubt. So if somebody calls the sheriff's office and says, I want somebody arrested for that, or the next time I'm at Lowe's and somebody comes up and complains and says, I want somebody arrested for that, then I'm afraid we'd end up in an arrest situation. Yes, sir.
So
I think that would happen.
We can open carry in public places. Does that include the parks?
Yes, in my opinion, it does.
Public,
Legal description of public. That's what, yeah. What is
public building, public courthouse.
Well, you're in a public building right now. I don't know what Northport's regulations are. I believe you could come in the first floor of the courthouse, but if you try to go up on the second floor of the courthouse, then you would be subject to something else. A public building would be the University of Alabama, but they have a clear-cut policy and regulations regarding firearms, and I have a feeling the university would have more than one officer respond to that call, given some of the issues that have taken place on college campuses. I can't give you an answer. I've had more people ask me about, man, we got to have some clear-cut rules on this. I can't give it to you because it's gray. And I think the way we get to black and white that you're looking for is going to be through the legislature, or we get a court case out of Tuscaloosa County that gives all of us, gives you, gives me, gives my folks, Steve's folks, everybody, Kerry's folks, the opportunity to understand what rules we're operating on. Right now, we really don't know, but I also said at the beginning that D.T. Marshall has asked that, maybe we'll show that to
There's a
you.
description of public place for you right there in 13A1159.
Okay.
And it's, I mean, either we go by this or Black's legal definition. You haven't given us a good definition, and I'm not trying to.
Well, good. Why don't you read that for us? Why don't you go ahead and read it?
I'm not very good at it.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Folks, you can go back and go to 13A 1159. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Yeah, 13A 1159. So, you may want to go back and look at it and read this and so on and so forth. And this is a pretty lengthy statute, so. But
It's just a public place. I got, that's all we're asking for.
is this?
Yeah, you
I think I already said that. I think I clearly said this building is a public place.
But that's, you're just like an attorney general opinion. The court hadn't decided on it, the legislature hadn't decided on it. And that's what the legislature said a public place was, so that's the description we have to use.
Scoot over there.
Am I not correct, Judge?
Let's just, the public place right here is defined in 13A1159. That's section 4, says, any place to which the general public has access and a right to resort for business, entertainment, or other lawful purpose. Does not necessarily mean a place devoted solely to the uses of the public. So that's the legal definition as I see it on a public place.
Keep reading that. There's another one.
This term shall include the front or immediate area or parking area lot of any store, shop, restaurant, tavern, shopping center, or other place of business. Such terms shall also include any public buildings, the grounds of any public building, or within the curtilage of any public building, or in any public parking lot, public street, right of way, sidewalk, right of way, or within any public park or other grounds. My question is, and I have several, but under 13A1155, the way I read that, if you're going to charge me with a firearm violation, a weapon violation, 13A1155, indictment for carrying weapons unlawfully, what proof do you have to have? And where it says, in an indictment for carrying weapons unlawfully, it is sufficient to charge the defendant carried concealed about his person a pistol or other description of firearms on premises not his own, a Bowie knife. Keep that concealed word in mind. Or knife, instrument of like kind, description, or other forbidden weapon, describing it as the case may be, and the excuse, and goes on. But the main thing on that one that I see is if you're gonna charge me for a weapons violation, it has to be concealed for you to charge me with that. And another question that I'd like to have answered is that if I'm not allowed to, as 52 does not allow me to carry on property not my own openly, how does your permit allow me to do that concealed?
Under a specific code of 13A1173, which Judge Harwood looked at. Judge, you want to answer the one question that he asked?
Which one was that?
There were three, I answered one, so there were two left.
Well, you can see the difficulty here because as you just read that definition of public place, it says the front of a store. Now, any lawyer will argue if the legislature specifically said front of the store is a public place, they're suggesting inside the store is not a public place. Those are just the sort of arguments you can with. I represent Shelton State, and we have problems. I say problems, I'm called upon. We've got a bunch of folks that want to come and organize, they want to do this, they want to have this sort of assembly, and I tell them that main, boy, that's a public place. Any place that you all have set aside and you allow anybody to come in and talk and hold, then that's a public place. The classroom is a public place. They can't come in there and suddenly say they want to give a talk in the president's office. So the line between what's a public place and not a public place sometimes gets a little tricky. The freedom of speech cases that the U.S. Supreme Court has dealt with deal a lot with that. What's a public forum? Because a public forum has to be open to all views, anybody's views. A lot of the cases had to do with the colleges trying to limit Christian organizations that wanted to come in and have presentations or organizations. And so the cases finally came, well, look, if you let anybody come, you got to let everybody come if it's a public place. Then they got into, well, what's a semi-public place? Well, that makes your head spin when you get into things like that. My understanding of the interaction that the courts have tried to wrestle with between 73 and 52, and again, I would say it's a very imperfect, it's kind of like putting a round peg in a square hole. But my understanding is they've said you can't interpret 52 at its face value because that would mean you can't carry anywhere except on your own property. And therefore, since 73 came along and was a later act, our interpretation, say the courts, is that 52 means that you can openly carry anywhere in a public place, but you can't go on the private property of another. It doesn't say with or without the objection. A later case talked in terms about an objection or consent or permission. That's as far as the cases have reached. We haven't had a case, let's see. Yeah, they were all juvenile and they were all dealing. In fact, the last one said, well, we don't have to worry about the fact you didn't prove you didn't have a permit because juveniles are under 18 and under 18 you can't have a permit. So they dealt with that case in that fashion. But the last three cases, and they all came bam, bam, bam from the Court of Criminal Appeals in 3 consecutive years. But the last case was 1997. So we are dealing with law that has some age on it, and even in those cases, they would go off sometimes on a tangent. So this is a typical lawyer answer. But I can tell you some things for sure. Some things I can say it's really a little murky if you take all the cases over the years and try to put together their language and say, what are they saying? What's the rule? What's the yardstick? I've given you the best I can give you. I hope there will be a case coming soon because we've got an Alabama Supreme Court that can answer the question.
We've got a case coming.
Well, then that's the way each one of these cases came up. There was an arrest, somebody was unsatisfied with whatever the disposition was, and they took it up to the court and got an answer.
But if it's not argued, like it's never been argued on the constitutional ground, if we don't argue it right, you don't help us.
Well, exactly. There are 2 or 3 of these cases where the folks, for whatever reason, didn't perceive the constitutional issue. They argued other things.
Is that case in Andalusia or Scottsboro?
Andalusia versus Mathis is a muni. That's inferior court case. It carries no weight.
Well, you have to know what city the case you're talking about. I understand there's a case.
It only versus Jacksonville.
Jacksonville?
Yeah.
Well, you can appeal a municipal court conviction to the circuit court, and from there you can appeal to the court of criminal appeals.
This muni case was a motion to dismiss, and they used the argument you're talking about. But like I said, I don't mean to sound like I know everything. And as a judge, you got all these cases that you go through. I go to, I'll read 14 5. And I said, you know, and the way I see the Constitution, we can give legislators permission to make a lot of these laws. I mean, that's it. You know, it's state first reading, like I said, clearly states, you can't smoke, you restrict the right, turns it into a privilege, license does that.
That's right, the Constitution trumps anything the legislature wants to do.
Go ahead, what's your question?
I want to thank all you gentlemen for being so gracious to see us all today. But Mr. Sexton, or Sheriff Sexton, this is a lot easier question than most of the other ones like I said. Some of the wording in the back of the permits that you provide are stating that you can't go into any restaurant that serves alcohol while you're having it sealed. I know I actually spoke with you on Facebook.
I think, are you the one that asked me about that?
Yes, sir. I just didn't know how we're going.
It's changed.
Okay, it has been changed.
That's changed. It allows you to go into a restaurant that has a license.
I just want to get that
After you brought that to our attention, it's in the process of going through. It'll be, you know, but we have put the word out that that's been changed.
Great.
I appreciate you bringing it up, and it's been, that issue's been taken care of.
Thank you very much for listening to us. Thank you. As long as you're not consuming.
Judge, I think this question may be for you. How do we interpret this on the trespassing law if you're trespassing somewhere else? 13A.7.1. To enter or remain unlawfully, a person enters or remains unlawfully in or upon premises when he is not licensed, invited, or privileged to do so. A person who, regardless of his intent, enters or remains in or upon premises which are at the time open to the public, does so with license and privilege, unless he defies a lawful order not to enter or remain, personally communicated to him by the owner of such premises or other authorized person. A license or privilege to enter or remain in a building which is partly open to the public is not a license or a privilege to enter or remain in that part of the building which is not open to the public, i.e. talking about the courthouse here. A person who enters or remains upon unimproved and apparently unused land, which is neither fenced nor otherwise enclosed in a manner designed to exclude intruders, does so with license and privileges unless notice against trespass is personally communicated to him by the owner of such land or other authorized person, or unless such notice is given by posting in a conspicuous manner. Would that have any bearing on what we're talking about here? Any clarification? That you enter or remain, a person who, regardless of his intent, enters or remains upon premises where at the time are open to the public, does so with license and privilege?
I think what that says is the general law. If it's a public place, you start off, every citizen starts off having an open license to go onto that property. Now, if someone comes in and says, no, we're closing this down, or you can't come, you know, if it's called to your attention, I will say to you that the law that got most involved in that was back in the civil rights movement when you had to sit in at the lunch counters. Are they public or are they not? And that gave rise to a whole lot of litigation where it was determined they are public. You know, Crest would like to say, wait, this is our store, we're not going to let you sit at the lunch counter, we can decide who sits at the lunch counter or not. And the court said, no, it's a public place, and therefore everybody in the public's invited. You need to keep everybody out, and you let everybody in. Now, there's different sections. You'd have somebody going, a lot of times they were prosecuted for trespass or trespass after warning. That's why you see all these posted signs that posted trespass, because if your land's not posted, there might be a presumption you have a right to go on it. So folks who go into a store and yet want to go back into the manager's office, wait a minute, there's certain places you can go and certain ones you can't.
Well, I think that I can speak that this is the position of the gun rights group, that when we go in a place, we enter with privilege. When we go in a public building. And there are a lot of corporations who follow state law, and they allow open carry. If you ask them, they allow it. I mean, you don't have to ask them, they already allow it. I could say Lowe's, Walmart, and I mean, y'all guys can Target, several places like that, they follow state law. And they understand that the law is that it's okay to openly carry weapons in the state of Alabama. But on the other hand, if we're asked to leave, we're out of there. You know, you're not gonna get a call. You better not get a call on us for that. I hope you don't. But if they ask me to leave, I'm just like this, and I'm out. I'm gone, because they don't want me there with that, and that's fine, that's okay.
Well,
That's like no shirt, no shoes, no service.
That's right. What you're saying, once they revoke that implicit privilege of license that starts off, we're gonna respect it.
Well, that's the way that we see, if a business is open to the public without restriction, we enter with license and privilege. And that's the standing of, that's what we see. And Sheriff, you're probably gonna get your wish on 52, because right now, we have a case that's going through where a guy was arrested on 52 in Jacksonville, Alabama. Big pardon? No, sir, he was arrested at a bank. At a credit union. But also, you know, this past year, or this year, we had a bill before the legislature to clear this up. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot here or anything, but the House bill, it was Senate Bill 337. And the Sheriff's Department fought us tooth and nail on that. I got right here a flyer from the Alabama Sheriff's Association, and they compare us to open carry can be compared to road rage on the highway. Sheriff, I'm kind of disappointed in this, and I think it's a little bit over the top. I don't know if you've ever seen this or not, but this is your copy if you haven't.
Can I clarify one?
You sure can.
This is the Alabama Sheriff's Association. I think you said the Sheriff's Department.
I'm sorry.
Not you.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to make sure we clarify that, so there's nobody leaving here with, but I did not, I didn't testify in this bill. We wrote no letters on this bill from the Sheriff's Office. So you're from the association, they may have fought you, and I think the guy that was actually down there was from Lee County, if I'm not mistaken, that maybe it was visiting on this, but, you know, I'm one of those that feels this is a very gray issue, and it's got to be dealt with either by the court or by the legislature.
We're working on it, Trev. Your time is up. Your word limit is exceeded. They're clapping for you because you did such a good job. Actually, the bill we had before the Senate, I don't know if any of y'all or some of y'all, I'm sure not aware, many of you are, basically would have taken 52 off the books. And it would have also removed the restriction to carry in your vehicle, that you have to have a permit. All 4 states that touch Alabama do not require a permit for you to carry in a vehicle, only Alabama. And we feel like that's a restriction and a restriction of a right that we have, that makes it a privilege that you have to have a permit to carry a vehicle.
You know, that's an interesting thing I'll butt in. 73 originally said to carry concealed in a vehicle or on your person. It had to be concealed in a vehicle. And then I forget when it was, sometime in the 50s, they flip-flopped and moved concealed to person, so that carrying any kind in a vehicle, concealed or unconcealed, became a violation of Section 73.
Yeah, that's what we tell you. When you open a car door and get 1 foot inside, you better have a permit. And we understand that. We don't think that's fair. We don't think that's constitutional. You know, I don't really think it's constitutional to have a permit to carry. I'm just giving my opinion, my personal opinion, because of the way our Constitution reads. But however, we recommend that everybody have a permit. If nothing else, if you have, for lack of a better word, a scrape with the law, the permit says, hey, I've been checked out and I'm okay. Another question I'd like to ask you, sir, Sheriff, is on permits, your age is 21. Is that correct?
You can get it younger than that, but you come in.
Okay, my daughter was denied at 19. They said, you said 21.
I don't know what her issue was, but if there's an issue for her to have one at 19, she can get one. You gotta have a limit somewhere. But 21 is where we go right now. Also, with 21, we generally stay away from the issues with the university to have issues with
I can understand that. If you live in Fayette, they give it to you 19 regardless, and they come to school down here. That was just. So my daughter couldn't get one, and she was driving to Shelton State at night by herself. And I don't mind telling you, I was a little bit perturbed about that. She shoots better than me. Anyway.
On the concealed carry
you have to have a permit to carry on a motorized vehicle, whether it's a motorcycle, boat, motor scooter, or it can be one of these normal motorized scooters, trike thing, any motorized vehicle. What I understand, you can't get into a boat without a concealed permit if you put your pistol in your boat.
I think that's a vehicle. I don't think it has to be motorized. Am I right? Trev, you can speak, Trev, I'll give you extra 5 words.
There is a description in the Code of Alabama that gives a description on what a vehicle is. I mean, it really doesn't say motorized or not, or boat. I mean, there's some, I don't know, there's not a decision I can find if a bicycle can put it or not.
Well, the problem is, it says
That might be
carry
in
in a
section
vehicle.
32.
It's kind of hard to carry in a bicycle and right out in the open. It's hard to carry in.
The judge said it's kind of hard to carry in a bicycle, but it's also kind of hard to carry in a motorcycle too. So that might be another gray area for sure. Anybody else got another question?
What if you lay that gun or that knife up on the dash where it
I can tell you right now, you can be arrested if you don't have a permit for it. Anywhere in the vehicle, concealed or no, it does not matter. Kerry, I believe.
Yeah, about a month ago, I was approached by an officer on a stop, and he was a county sheriff. At that time, I had my pistol in my seat. I just came back from a gun show. I had
Your pistol where, I'm sorry?
Sir?
It's pistol on the seat, okay.
Yes, on the seat. And at which time, he pulled me back to the back of the car, which is fine, me wanting to eliminate the possibility of me being able to get to my firearm. I have no problem with that. At which time he told me that if my pistol was not concealed in my vehicle, that he would arrest me if he ever saw me.
That's incorrect. I wish you'd give me the time and day. You write you a ticket by some chance?
No.
What did you get stopped for?
Busted headlight.
Okay. He's incorrect. You can hang it off tie it to your mirror if you want to carry it like that. You can do whatever you want. If it's inside the car, right now under the current law, you gotta have a pistol permit. He's incorrect. If you'll let me know what time, or give me your tag number and your name afterwards, I can find out who it was that stopped. We can take care of it.
I'm pretty sure everyone is in agreement that laws aren't being told to the police officers well enough, or taught to them well enough, where they can enforce it by the way it's written. So they're taking it on their own terms of saying what they want. Saying what they think is right.
No, sir, I would disagree with you on on 73, it's clear, and they're taught in the academy that you can hang it off your mirror if you want. That's a clear-cut issue that if the officer said that, or the deputy said that, then he's mistaken, and if you'll be more than glad to provide that information to me afterwards, I'll find out who made the traffic stop, since it would be on our CAD, and I can find out and correct that issue.
All right, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, on this scenario, standing on side of the street, minding my own business, policeman walks up, questions me about open carry, and asks for my gun, what I do. City, state, county, whoever, they ask me to give them my gun.
If a police officer sees you standing on the street corner and you're having a gun openly, it would make me very upset if he didn't at least approach you and try to find out what you're doing, because,
No, that's not my question. He asked
he
for
asked
my
for your gun. I wouldn't stand there and argue with him. And the reason for that is because if you stand there and argue with him, it's a no-win situation at that particular point in time. It's not, if you're not doing anything wrong, you're not doing anything illegal, why not cooperate with the officer, let him go about his business and make sure that that's what you're doing, because it's such an ambiguous thing to be standing on the street corner, and for that not to look unusual or look odd, I would think that if you're not doing anything wrong, you have no problem cooperating with the officer and letting him go about making sure that you're not up to anything illegal, and then once he determines that, he moves on and you move on. Yes, sir.
What would be the reasonable suspicions to stop her? She's sitting on the corner
I mean, if I saw you sitting, if I saw you standing on the street corner, if I saw you standing on the street corner, we've had people that have cased banks and businesses to commit crimes. I mean, we don't know a lot of times unless we stop and ask. And a lot of times, and that's what I stress to the officers, to be polite when they come in contact with someone with an open weapon, because that person doesn't necessarily have to be a criminal or doing anything wrong, but we're not gonna know if we don't ask. And so that's what we preach to our guys, just take the time out to ask and be polite.
In the last meeting that you were in, this is how I left the meeting feeling. I understood you to say, as well as your love for all your men to be on the up and up, perfect angels, I know that there's some out there that's not. Who's to say, if I go to, he asked me for my gun, and I go to hand him over the gun, that he doesn't say I was drawing on it?
Well, and most officers won't say hand your gun over to me. Most officers will ask you to let them remove the gun from the holster. Because we don't want any misconception about what it is that person's intention was, whether they were pulling out of the holster to hand it to us or not. So most of the times they will take up the gun out of the holster for you.
That was gonna be my question. I'll clarify that. I'm not unholstering my gun to hand it to the police officer. That's a good way to get there.
For what it's worth, never unholster your weapon. And we try to tell everybody that. And never unholster your weapon. Let the policeman do it. Let law enforcement do it. If they want it, let them do it.
Do I recall you saying at the meeting, the last meeting I was at, that you were at?
You asking me or you asking?
That at that point, when he asked for that gun, as long as I'm not making a move to the gun, ask for him to call, disappear, to come out?
Yes, if you're having a problem with an officer, whether it's a rookie officer or a veteran officer, if you don't like what's going on, you can always ask them to contact their supervisor.
Leaving my gun in the hood.
And ask them to contact the supervisor. And the supervisor, they'll do that, and the supervisor will come out and try to address the situation.
I want to answer that question also. I think that's going to differ from department to department.
Yes.
That's going to differ from department to department. So if you go to a department like Birmingham, and you want to get into that discussion with the street officer, you may end up elsewhere. You know, I can only say this for you. I would suggest if they ask you for the weapon, for their own officer safety, they're going to take that weapon. I don't think that a deputy's going to. I know a deputy would not. If they're not going to sit there for 40 minutes and wait on a supervisor to get up to East Magnolia in Tuscaloosa County. If you want to do that, then they're going to ask you for the weapon. You know, sergeant may come up here, but they're not going to let you keep that weapon. If there's a question, you know, I think Steve answered it right off the bat. Things are going to go much easier if you're cooperative. You know, we both work. I got 35 years. When somebody starts getting into that argumentative mode on you, that's an indicator there's a problem. And you're just escalating the issue. You're going to get a backup unit coming. You're going to get other things. So the easiest thing to do is just have. I think as Eddie also said, handle it at the lowest possible threshold. Just move on. Let them run what they've got, because they don't know if you're probation or parolee.
At what point though can it become harassment by the police officer?
Well, every officer has the right to protect. The courts have been clear, extremely clear. They have the right to protect themselves for in the job that they do. I would hate to, you know, if somebody wants to argue that point, then there's a process for you to do it, either through the state court or through the federal court, and you can do that. But when it's out there on the scene and the officer's handling the situation, has he done it 4 times to you, 5 times, 6 times in a row? Then you're getting into, you know, a harassment issue. But his first contact with you, I'd move on and keep it at the lowest possible threshold.
The police have rights, you don't.
Alabama law that.
Go ahead. Then go ahead, because it's on the subject.
The police department, law enforcement not stop a citizen just merely because we have a weapon, an open weapon, carry weapon. I mean, I not read that somewhere. They will not be stopped just for the fact that we have those carry.
Like I've read something about that, but I can't.
answer your question, I don't know the specific law that's written out.
If that's the law, and then you just stated, why wouldn't we just submit to the police officer, well, if that's the law, and they stopped us merely because we have a weapon?
You're gonna have to show it to us, neither one of us.
I'm not familiar with the law that you're talking about.
We're not familiar, but if I get a call that you're standing on the corner with a gun, then I have a duty and responsibility to go check you. I can't say I'm
A
sorry.
rolling check, or
I'm sorry.
a rolling check, like, if he's a lot of money.
If somebody calls me and says there's a man with a gun in a stop block, and he and I go together, then we've got to check you. We have a duty and responsibility to that person that called us to go up and find out who you are, what you're doing there, why you're carrying a gun in the open. You know, that is a duty and responsibility that we have from being law enforcement officers.
What if you've not received a complaint?
I'm sorry?
What if you haven't received a complaint, it's just somebody standing there with a pistol on their side, waiting for a ride or whatever?
And about two, you know, we can sit here and you can what if all night long. The question is, what time, where are you, what kind of neighborhood are you in? All those variables come into establishing what we're gonna do and how we're gonna do it. The gentleman in the back was very clear when he said, you know, we have rights to and the opportunity to protect ourselves. But my question would be, you're raising the issue of harassment. Does the guy come right back around and stop you the next night? That, you know, that's where you start getting into harassment. So the first time deal, then, you know, he's doing his, I'm gonna think he's doing his job. If he comes down and you write up a complaint, he's done this to you 3 times, that's a different issue.
Chief, excuse me, I've got to leave. My wife's mother got put in hospice today. I told her at 8 o'clock I'd be there, so I appreciate it.
Thank you, Judge.
I worked in Tuscaloosa Metro Jail for 4 years back when they first got everything, so I know what's out there on the street. I've seen it. I believe in the policeman checking you for protection of himself. If he takes my gun, say he takes my gun, if he doesn't believe in the open carry law, and he don't know what is he gonna do with that gun? Is he gonna take it to your office and say, you need to come down and get your gun back, or is he gonna give you your gun back right there on the street? How does that come about?
I don't think, and we've had contact with some, and I don't know if any people in the room that the Tuscaloosa Police Department has had contact with, so I can't, it's hard to speak on a hypothetical, what if it's gonna happen. But I don't believe we've taken the gun from anybody and said, you have to come to the police department and pick that gun up. I think we've had contact. I don't believe that they'll take the gun. If he takes it and he runs the serial numbers and it's obvious that that gun's not stolen, or it had the serial number hasn't been altered in any way, then I wouldn't see him taking that gun. But I don't know of a situation, like I said, we're talking hypotheticals here, so I can't tell you what every officer is gonna do. I got 285 guys that work for me, and I couldn't stand here and tell you what each and every one of those guys are gonna do. But if an officer has come in contact with some of you in the room, and I believe that they have, I don't know of a situation where they've taken your weapon and had you come to the police department to pick it up. So for me to speak on hypotheticals, I just can't do that.
Chief, if I may be so bold, and I'm trying to learn here and understand, and this is all hypothetical stuff, but if you stop me and take my gun and run my numbers, is that not a violation of search and seizure? Yep. It is.
I think this one, again, you're into some areas that anytime, we run car tags, we run a car tag, we run serial numbers on things that are in cars, that's not a violation of search and seizure. And I don't think that running your, unless somebody can show me something completely different, running a number on a gun that we have in a violation of search and seizure, especially when you're getting it back.
And then when we talk about violations of search and seizure, the courts determine that particular issue. And that's an issue that's brought to the court's attention by whoever feels like they've been wronged by the police officer for it. So to stand here and say, that's a violation of my rights, or that's a violation of search and seizure, that would be a matter for the court to decide on that particular issue. and tell us if it is or if it isn't.
What about if we're being questioned when they're talking about, just standing on the street corner or whatnot? We have a right not to self-incriminate ourselves. How are you guys gonna take them if we don't say anything? If you're asking us questions, we just stand there and don't say anything?
I'll answer that one for you. I'll take
That's
you
not a
off the
question.
hook. Okay, I have read some things, and I've been on open carry blog sites, and they say don't answer this and don't identify yourself and whatever. You're setting yourself up to go to jail.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I've had nothing but
I
beautiful
would
experiences
tell you,
with
if there's anything that I disagree with, you know, and I agree with you on most of the things that I've read, I'm concerned about two things. One's the opinions, and the other's where they say, don't do anything, because as soon as you set yourself up in that situation, and they're working again, what's the situation, what time is it, what issues have been taking place, so on and so forth, and you can get where you don't want to be in a very short period of time. I just can't urge you to handle it at the lowest level and go on. But if you get into that situation and then they go to court and they say, man, he was being awfully hesitant. It's been, my 35 years experience. He was acting like somebody who's been involved in something, and I just think you're asking for trouble. And I think some of the people are leading you astray on some of the things that I have read when you do that.
Well, that's not something I would do. I just was asking you.
Well, I've read it. I've read it over on the blog sites and whatever, and I just think they're leading you astray. And I would tell you that, we don't want to, we got other things to do. But if we're doing that, we get there, they identify as open carry, so on and so forth, see you later, bye. I mean, we've come across a lot of them. I'm not aware of any arrests that we've had.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm gonna let Kurt speak.
I've got a question for you, for the chief and the sheriff. I don't think any of us here would care if you ran our criminal record. I don't think that's a problem. We carry or open carry. You say that you respond to calls. If you see somebody, you might question them if they're open carry. I'd just like to ask a question. How many times when you respond to these calls, have you ever had a gang member that was open carry? I mean, have you ever had a criminal that you caught open carry?
I saw Stephanie Taylor here tonight. And as this issue becomes more and more prevalent, and this may be a question for Chris England for two reasons. One, he's African American, and two, I don't think I see them. Well, I think Chris, you're the second. You know what? I've known him for so long. We run together. We do whatever. I don't look at him. He's my brother. I mean, he's family. So he and I have been through thick and thin, and I look at him as my brother and friend. So I'm sorry, Chief, but I never looked at you as black. I apologize. The situation. Go ahead and ask that question again.
Have you ever confronted someone open? Have you ever had a gang member open carry?
Oh.
Have you ever had a criminal open
Well,
carry?
I think that we're seeing it in other areas of the country. Yes, we're seeing that. Is the reality going to be once they learn about this that they're going to do it? The reality is the reality as they learn about this, are they going to do it? The question to answer is yes. So from our perspective, we don't wait until the last second trying to be reactive. I think everything that we do here, whether it be the purchase of equipment, the training we have, we got a Bearcat here. Why do we have a Bearcat here? Because of Columbine and because of other things. And we use the Bearcat when we go out on high-risk warrants. We want to protect our folks. Do we use aviation assets? Do we use other? Why? Because it helps us, and we do various things. I think after she writes this article, and folks, after Stephanie writes this article, she just left. People are going to be there are going to be some folks out there that you realize I can push this issue. I can do this. It's just a matter of time before it starts. And I think
our criminals not going to want to draw the attention to themselves of saying, "Hey, I've got a gun. I'm just opening this."
Oh, you'd be surprised at what they'll do.
Well, like I said, answer the question, so I'm assuming the answer to this question.
I have no doubt. that I'll give you a for real instance. What do you think would happen if we put somebody in early American hip hop and we put them in some of these country grocery stores? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think's gonna happen when, has anybody been up to Hosmer's? Anybody ever been to Hosmer's? Anybody ever been to Hosmer's Grocery? He's like Mr. Bianchi, he's got like 7 of them on at the same time. I don't think, I would hate to see how Mr. Hosmer would do with somebody in early American hip hop going in there to his store. I would just think that will be something that will probably happen down the road. So, we've always got to look at everything in regard to what's current, what's going to happen down the road as people get more and more interested. I mean, you can take technology, these iPhones and things like that, and how people are what it's meant to do and what some people do with it.
I understand. So to answer the question, you haven't had that problem yet that you anticipate. Is that right?
Well, personally, I can't think of one. That narcotics has come across some books, but I don't know if they've affiliated, said that they are gang members. But we have had some issue where folks have said open carry on narcotics deals. That's the only one I'm aware of.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna beat a dead horse for this. I understand there's gray areas, and I want to direct this question to both departments, and I would ask for a response. Like I said earlier today, I was in presence of police officers, Tuscaloosa. Nothing was said. I was this close to them, sitting at a restaurant eating. I've been in the same situation with sheriff. In fact, the only time I have ever been questioned about my farm was when I was concealed carried in my vehicle in my glove box. And you want to see it? Yes, we'd like to see it. Okay, fine. Not asking for what if, I understand that, like you say, if you find me in the rough part of the neighborhood with a firearm, questions are going to, I understand how that looks. What I'm asking is, both of y'all have had to confront your deputies and the police and say, this is how we're going to approach this. What is y'all's go ahead? What are you telling your men? We get a call. I understand that somebody in Walmart or Home Depot might call, there's a man with a gun here. I understand you're going to come out and investigate. If I'm asked to leave and I'll leave, there's no argument. I'm trying to look at what is y'all's approach to this.
Let me try to answer your question, and I'm probably going to do what you want to do and give you the unpopular answer. Okay? He's got 285. I've got 101. I cannot tell you what they're going to do. They're not programmed robots. We don't have them. We don't know what they're going to do. You may run into somebody who then turns around and says, you know what, I want to make a case. I would hope they don't. We've had training on open carry. We've told them about open carry. We've tried to do, but again, I can't tell you what they're going to do. The biggest suggestion, if you don't want to have any issue whatsoever, is I'm carrying concealed, and you have the opportunity to do it. But you're going to have, as long as you carry in the open, and somebody makes a call to us, they're going to come talk to you. If somebody feels uncomfortable because you're wearing a gun, or the time frame or whatever, I can't give you an answer to every question. It is so gray, and it has not been established. The law has not been repealed by the legislature, nor has a court of higher jurisdiction overturned it. So we've talked to you for an hour and a half. I cannot give you a concrete answer as to what every officer is going to do.
I can understand that and respect that, because nobody in here is going to approach the situation the same when they're come to. I guess, let me redirect my question as to what is your training telling the officers on how to approach it, as in, we're not going to allow this, or we do understand it's a gray area, as long as, they're not fitting a profile, or let's not use that word, as long as they're not causing a disturbance well, I don't want to go there now.
Okay, let me go back to what I said earlier. Let me go back to what I said earlier, okay? I think what you're looking for me to do is come up and do this. Hi, how you doing? That's not going to happen. Hi, how you doing? They're going to come up, they're going to be cautious, they're going to be cops. If there's some reason for them to do that, when they ask for your firearm, I'm asking you, please give it to them. Please don't get into that. But there is no concrete answer that's going to tell you that they're going to walk up from your left side, your right side, or whatever else, or or what they're going to do, or what they're going to. I mean, these officers are given the leeway to be able to deal with a situation as they see it and what the circumstances that deem with it. Now, I think Chief Anderson has told you they want them to be dealt with politely. I want them to be dealt with politely. I think Chief Anderson has talked to you about harassment. I've talked to you about harassment. If it's the first time they've made contact with you, that's great. If it's the second or third time, I want to ask them additional questions. But there's no way that I mean, I've heard these things from open carry folks. You know, they want to know exactly what they're going to do. We just can't tell you. We don't know.
What have you told them?
What is your
policy?
Yeah, I think he's asking, what have you instructed your office?
Your office?
There's no standard operating procedure, because they're.
But there is no such thing as a open carry standard operating procedure. It is a person with a weapon. I mean, they're approaching somebody with a gun. Just like when we approach deer hunters out in the woods on a call where somebody says, hey, somebody's shooting, or dove hunt or whatever, where they're spraying pellets on somebody's house. We get those calls. And so you just don't walk up and go, hi, how you doing? You know, you're asking them to do something with their weapon. Hey, how about putting your weapon down or separate them? It's just no cut and dried answer to be able to tell you what they're going to do. Steve Anderson has told you, and I'm coming back and saying, hey, just follow the instructions and move on, and make it local.
You said that you had to talk to your deputies, train them on open carry.
They're aware of open carry. They're aware.
What have you told them?
They've got the information that's been put out by the county attorney. They're aware that you can walk down the middle of the street with it. Okay, they're aware of open carry. But the question comes in again, what happens when you're inside? The question he's asking me about what if I'm sitting in a restaurant, they may come ask him a question, because that's the gray area.
I don't have a problem with the question. I'm saying,
Is he going to be arrested?
am I going to get, I think that's what I'm trying to get at. What are y'all, because I have had no problems, and I have been in front of deputies and
Okay,
police.
I'm going to go back to what I said early on. This is not one of our major issues, and we try to deal with it as low profile as possible. Eventually, I wish I could say that it won't happen, but there may be one of my guys that goes ahead and does. I hope it's the city. I hope it's one of the city's 285. But I can't answer that question. Better off would be Northport, since he's not here. But I wish we could answer your question, but I don't think we can.
There's not a definitive answer for that. There's not. Clay, did you have a question? We're gonna take about 2 or 3 more questions. I'm sure everybody's flattered about pulling mine. But anyway, go ahead.
90% of them probably already concealed carry as it is. Would you rather them concealed carry or open carry?
I think that what we're going to see is human nature. And 10% of the folks are great. 80% of the folks are normally great. But we end up dealing with 1, 2 to 10% of the population is our greatest majority of calls that we deal with. And that 10%, if they feel like if we've denied them a pistol permit for some reason, and they feel like they can open carry, we're probably going to see that. But as it becomes more popular, we're going to see some issues that will come out. It's human nature. It'll happen. And so we got to be ready for that. And that's going to create some issues. That's going to create somebody somewhere out of all the open carry folks. Somebody's going to show their hind end, and there's going to be a fight. There's going to be a gun that's brought out, or whatever. It's human nature. It'll happen out of the thousands of calls that we go to. Just because that we don't react necessarily the same way all the time. We try to deal with people politely. We try to deal with people. We want to make sure that the gentleman brought up constitutional right. You've got to deal with constitutional rights. So I cannot give you an answer that you're looking for that says we're going to do A, B, C, and D, because it may change on time, date.
I'm not asking you what you would do. I'm just asking you, would you prefer to see a gang member openly carrying versus concealed carry?
If they happen to have one, I can deal with it. But even though I see one, I'm still going to deal to see if he's got a second one. I can't tell you how many times I've taken multiple weapons off a suspect. Here's Mike Bishop. Here's Mr. Bianchi again. Here's somebody that probably could put 7 or 8 of them on him. But just because we see one, we don't stop. That's why we have search and prevent.
On that, you're not just going, somebody's not calling you, so you make contact with them, or done anything to call them. You're not just gonna walk behind and grab a weapon
Well, I don't think you're gonna get prone down, you know, those types of things, but, again, it is all different, and how you react. Hey, yeah, sure, Deputy, what's up? Or, you know, go take a flying hike, then, you know, that gets to something else. That initial contact we had tells us a lot.
Okay, well, we're going, we need to take one or two more questions, we're gonna have to call this in. Anthony, do you have a question?
I got to say, I was approached in Walmart, and I had 4 law enforcement. We went real good, he was real polite.
Northport or Tuscaloosa?
Yes, Northport. It went real well. He asked me for my ID, I gave him my pistol permit, he ran a call. I was on my way, he was on his way. I think the least resistance you give him is probably
Thank you for saying what we've been trying to get out. I applaud you. There is no way that we can give you a particular on every single thing, but the police officer who comes in contact with somebody, I've got one who was shot, and what do you think he's going to be like the first time he comes up on somebody that's got a gun? He's going to react differently than somebody else. So, I mean, he's still not back to work. The one that was shot in December. So, I mean, people get shot, and these guys are cautious.
I don't have a question, I have a statement. I've listened to all of this. Obviously, you guys don't have the answers. Where are the politicians in Montgomery that are making these laws? Why aren't they here listening to this?
Would you like to ask him a question?
The legislature.
He's been dying for somebody to ask him a question.
Sitting here all night. This is like the first meeting I've ever been to, and nobody paid me any attention. When I leave the room, I get blamed for everything. But what's your question?
Are you gonna take this problem that we have, that these law enforcement people have, where they can't answer what the laws are? Are you gonna take it to Montgomery and try to get some clarification on this?
Well, one of the things that you gotta remember, we're in the state of Alabama, and generally speaking, gun rights and gun issues are not big issues in Alabama because there's pretty much an understanding of where most of us stand on these issues. Now, we do have a controversy in the law with the 2 code sections, but I've been in the legislature since 2006, and there has not been a bill introduced that would, until last year, that would close that loophole or attempt to close that loophole. So, I mean, it's obvious now an issue that we're going to have to deal with. There has been legislation introduced. I can tell you that there's going to be a segment of the legislation. The legislators going to be against it. It's going to be something to forward. And you're probably going to have to find a comfortable medium in the middle to, kind of find a compromise. Because there's some people, because of things that have happened in the media and across the country, that are very leery about gun possession. And look, unfortunately, we can't answer most of these questions, and I'll tell you my other job, I'm a city prosecutor, so we can't answer most of these questions because most of these things are contextual. That means all the circumstances that surround an approach kind of guide the investigation. And I've never seen a law-abiding citizen get arrested faster than debating a police officer on the side of the road in the middle of the night. It happens all the time, and no one ever understands why. Well, I got arrested because or I got stopped and I was there with a police officer for 30 to 40 minutes. It's because when you don't answer questions, you create reasonable suspicion. So if you've got a weapon and you're not answering questions, the next thing the officer's supposed to think is, well, something must be going on because he's got a weapon and he won't tell me anything. So this is a general citizen, aside from just being a part of an open carry organization. You want your law enforcement to be inquisitive and polite, because that's how they solve crimes and prevent criminal activity, by asking questions. And generally speaking, most of the time, most of the guys that the chief has and the sheriff has are very polite. And their job is because they want to get from person to person. They want to get in and get out. So if they can resolve an issue quickly, that's what they're going to do. Because 9 times out of 10, when they're talking to somebody that's a law-abiding citizen, they've got about 15 or 20 other calls that are pending on the radio in the car they've got to address. But as far as legislature is concerned, Whenever there's an issue that's it's developing like this, there will be legislation that's introduced. And just the climate that we're in right now, it will be debated, and I guarantee you we'll have some sort of legislation passed relatively quickly concerning this issue.
Well, since this is Tuscaloosa, we're the largest open carry or gun rights organization so far in the state. It's kind of represented here, and you're in Tuscaloosa. Where do you stand on the bill?
No, I don't take a position on any legislation that I haven't read. Now, as far as
Did you read last year's?
yeah, I did. I never had an opportunity because it never got out of the Senate. But again, you gotta understand something about the legislature. The person that sponsors your legislation can actually be against it. Because the person may sponsor the bill, and they own that bill at that moment, because other legislators want to take that issue from him. And he could be actually sponsoring the bill to kill it. So you gotta understand, and again, any piece of legislation that comes before me, I read it, I vet it before I tell you I'm going to support it. Now, generally, I'm from Alabama. My friends have guns. Everybody I know has guns. I support the Second Amendment. There's no question about it. But I don't want to support legislation that authorizes things that, as a community, we don't support. So I've got to see the legislation first. I can't commit to you that I will support something, but I definitely won't support something that unduly abridges the right to bear firearms. And look, as far as open carry is concerned, it's disconcerting to me, but it's the law. And I'm a lawyer, so I practice law, and I support the rule of law. And if it's legal, which it obviously is in the state of Alabama, I support it.
One question.
Yes, sir.
I run into a situation where the cops and I enjoyed each other's company. Really, you know, and the thing is he saw me carrying guns out of my house at 4:30 in the morning, and he stopped and shined his flashlight at me, and I'm glad he did. He didn't know if I was a thief or not. And I told him, I said, you can either sit there and excuse my life when you get your ass out, and I'll show you some neat guns. And I said, I'm not gonna give you permission to search my car, but I'll show you anything. And see, our attorneys tell us, and I understand y'all's position, and you have to understand our position. If we decide to exercise our right to remain silent, that should not be reasonable suspicion.
But let me ask you,
public sentiment.
but hold on, wait, let me ask you a question though. And there's always a reasonable and logical counterpoint to what you're saying. Because if you are a casual observer of a similar situation, and you've got an officer that casually approaches someone and say, okay, what's your name? And you say, well, I'm not telling you anything. Okay, well, what are you doing here? I don't have to tell you anything. Well, you understand at that moment it's just someone watching it as a third person. You're saying, well, he's got to be up to something. And you want that police officer to continue to ask questions and inquire to figure out what's going on. Because at the minute that officer walks away and says, well, he's not going to tell me anything, and that guy commits a ridiculous criminal act that could have been prevented had he continued his line of questioning, then you're going to turn around and say, well, why didn't he finish his line of questioning?
More likely scenario, and I mean, you know what I'm saying, was people with open carry, I will say 99.9% of them I can understand, and this is logic that's used across the country. You know, we can read on OpenCarry.org, we've seen incidents.
But let me point something out to you, though. And I think this is something that's been made over and over and over again. Tuscaloosa has the largest open carry organization, and not one person is interested.
And I apologize, and I'll tell you what.
But remember now, this is not, to a lot of people, this is a new issue. To see someone carrying a weapon without a badge is something that people have to get used to. So people are going to ask questions. The people are going to say, ask the police officer the next one that they see, did you talk to the individual because he's got a gun? This is a new thing for me. And for me, it is.
I understand.
So I mean, you know, there's going to be something that you're going to have. There's going to be some questions you're going to have to deal with. But I think as time goes on, our officers and the deputies have already pretty much established how they're going to deal with it. So I mean, it's pretty good.
Let's get one more question back here. Yeah.
This is a question or statement. What I've understood is that the mere presence, this is for all three of y'all maybe, the mere presence of a gun does not necessarily constitute reasonable suspicion. But the other circumstances where
what when may add together to constitute reasonable suspicion.
Right.
But just the mere presence of a firearm does not by itself constitute reasonable suspicion.
Well, I mean, you're talking about reasonable suspicion, just the mere presence alone of almost anything doesn't constitute reasonable suspicion. And most officers don't operate in a vacuum. Because when they take into account the situation, they're not just looking at your gun, they're looking at everything around you. So, I mean.
Walking down the street and handling these two things.
Well, because look, I'll tell you, this is me personally, and I know you guys too, if at 2 o'clock in the morning, the gentleman is walking down the middle of the street in your neighborhood, and he's got a gun on him, you're gonna want to know what's going on with him. And so that's what they're here for.
Marvin, last question, guys, last question.
Well, it's this. I want us to leave here tonight knowing we feel really strong about our rights to carry a weapon. The reason we carry the weapon is because there's bad guys. These gentlemen, they're professionals. They exist. Their positions exist to take care of the family. We have a common ground. When we see a cop, we shouldn't arch our back like a bunch of cats. Or neither should officers. We have common ground with these men, and they have common ground with us. Let's turn our focuses towards the bad guys. We want to defend ourselves, and we want them to catch them.
I see where you're a Vietnam veteran, and when I was up.
Just a submarine sailor.
I'm sorry?
No, sir, just a submarine sailor.
Submarine sailor.
Submarine.
Yes, I need to wear my, you're in the military, is that correct? Yes. Military.
He's a Navy guy.
All right. Well, that's why I wear glasses. We appreciate what you did, and when I was up in D.C. and had the opportunity to work with the military, super appreciation. We all support the Second Amendment. There is common ground here. I own multiple guns. My son's a cop in Los Angeles. He's a gang cop, as a matter of fact, in Los Angeles. So, he can tell you the stories that'll turn your hair. My youngest son, he's got a gun. We have no problem with it. But this issue that we're being asked to give specifics on, we simply don't have the ability to do so right now. But I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead. This is, I promise this is the last one. I got somebody else I want to recognize.
I'm sure everybody in this room knows the answer to this question. I'm stupid about this, but, so it sounds like to me there is no way I can transport my handguns to the shooting range without having a concealed carry permit. Is that true?
That's correct.
You're kidding me.
It's not a joke, it's the truth.
Well, actually, I think there is a way you can do it and maintain the law. It just can't be.
I have to walk?
You have to take it apart. You have to take it apart. Can't be a function. You could have it in a case in pieces in the trunk of your car, for example, and nobody's going to hassle you over that if it's in pieces. If it's a fully functional operating firearm in Alabama, yeah, you could run into that.
Okay, how many of y'all have been on the Facebook page and heard about the city of Hamilton? Okay. I want to introduce you to somebody tonight who was the foot soldier and a patriot in that effort. And he's right over here. He's Curtis Self. Stand up, Curtis. He wanted to speak real bad tonight, but we probably went out now. I'm just kidding. For those of you who don't know, Hamilton, Alabama passed a city ordinance banning weapons on city property. And in that ordinance, it said that if you were caught on city property, permit or not, am I right on that, permit or not, that they would take your weapon, seize your weapon, it would be given to the police department for either destruction or use in their force. That law is unconstitutional. It's against the Code of the State of Alabama for 1145 1.1 and 1180-11. Curtis put feet on the Constitution, talked to the police chief, talked to the mayor, talked to the council people. Yesterday, they threw it out. I do not know. Tuscaloosa is going to have a awakening on that, I believe, pretty soon.
They are.
So anyway, I appreciate all y'all coming. I think the effort was good. I appreciate all our police and law enforcement that are here. And I want to say specifically to Chief Anderson that I have the highest respect for him that there is, because his officers, he gave them the good word, I guess we'd call it. And I have never, in the 28 and a half years that I have worked with the city of Tuscaloosa and around and with the police officers of the city of Tuscaloosa, I've never seen them abuse anybody or do anything that was out of the way. And I think that speaks highly of our chief and the officers in the department, and I'm really proud of them. One thing that I would like to say too is that it's not them against us, it's us and them against them. And the reason we carry, for the main part, is because most of us feel like it's a deterrent. That's what we feel. And so anyway, that being said, we'll bid everybody adieu. It's 8:30. My wife was looking for me 30 minutes ago. And so I appreciate everybody coming. I'm going to ask my friend, Chief Anderson, I call him friend, I mean it too. This is the guy right here. If I disagree with him, I still like him. I don't know why, but that's what it is. Chief, we're going to have just a short prayer before we go, but Chief, don't do it for us.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day that you've allowed us to come together. And although we don't always agree on all the issues, we do agree that we can come together as one and treat each other with respect and love. Now, God, please give us safe travel as we go back to our destinations, and be with us as we go about our day-to-day lives. Keep us safe and keep our families safe. In your Son Jesus' name we ask these blessings. Amen.
Amen.